The day begins the same way it always does, the alarm at 6, the soft blue light against the curtains, the slow shuffling to the kitchen where a mug waits and the unpaid bills form a small, patient monument on the table. You move through the motions, the shower, the train, the polite smiles at work, while a quieter life, the one you sketch in the dark, waits unfinished. It's not catastrophe, it's a steady erosion of possibility. There are moments of joy, a child's laugh, a friend's text, but under them all is a slow, persistent restlessness, a sense that something whispered inside you is being ignored. Then, like a barely audible note beneath the noise, a message arrives. Not a thunderclap, but a series of small, sacred prompts, a line from a song on the radio that stops you mid-commute, start again with what you have, a stray post-it someone left on the community board quoting a phrase that lands like a compass, steward what is entrusted to you, a neighbor who, handing you a spare loaf, says with calm certainty, there is a way through when you mind your hands. Each seems insignificant alone, but together they form a pattern, a language spoken in tiny, persistent nudges. You begin to notice how the world answers when you listen. A mentor returns your call with a 3-minute piece of advice that reshapes a decision. A late-night prayer that you barely remember becomes the source of a steady idea that keeps returning. In the silence between obligations, a voice, sometimes yours, sometimes something wiser, suggests simple practices, count small wins, name one need to meet today, give something away even when you think you can't. You resist at first, doubt is loyal. Maybe I'm chasing a mirage, you tell yourself. But the nudges continue, gentle as hands guiding you out of a room you've grown accustomed to. This is the spark, the first call that asks more than it demands. It promises not instant wealth, but guidance toward abundance if you are willing to listen and act. The question that hangs now, heavier than the morning bills, is not whether you'll hear the message, but whether you'll answer it. In the next hour an envelope will arrive that presses everything closer, the crucible has started. If this moment reaches you, let it stay with you, like the video, like the voice, and if you want the rest of this journey, tap like, subscribe and ring the bell. You wake before dawn to the soft glow of your phone lighting the kitchen counter, a stack of envelopes like small, accusing moons. The fridge hums, the coffee maker clicks, and in the quiet the messages begin, not loud proclamations, but gentle, layered nudges, pay attention, be faithful with little, choose courage. They come as memories of promises you made to yourself, as a calm admonition from a neighbor who once told you, start with what you can steward. They come in the clench of your jaw when a late notice arrives, in the tightness of a call you can't answer without thinking of consequences. Days compress into a pressure cooker. An extra medical bill, a missed rent deadline, the car's warning light flaring like a small, stubborn star. You pace the living room and rehearse arguments in your head, to a creditor, to a boss, to your own fear. A voice, almost like someone standing beside you, lays out old truths in new language. Habit shapes destiny, generosity opens doors, small sacrifices pay great dividends. You scoff, you bargain, but the voice doesn't leave. It points to stewardship, not austerity for its own sake, but deliberate reallocation. Cancel the subscriptions that fill time but empty the wallet, prime a portion for savings before temptation finds it, track the pennies that roost unnoticed at the edges of your life. A concrete choice appears, an invitation to teach a single evening class at the community center, a neighbor offering to split a ride to work, the decision to sell an item you've kept for pride. Each small act is accompanied by doubt, will it be enough? And then by results that feel almost too small to mention, a payment cleared, a landlord's call of understanding instead of anger, the relief of an unexpected check from the evening class. The crucible heats, then clarifies. Discipline and courage carve new habits, doors you hadn't noticed open just a crack when you push with faith and consistent effort. You find yourself less frantic and more purposeful, listening for the next counsel. If this moment resonates, the tension, the whispers, the deliberate choices, let that feeling be marked, give it a like, join the journey by subscribing and ringing the bell. Ahead, the pressure will lead to a turning point where reaction becomes strategy, and you will learn to steward blessing with intention. Night had settled like a soft weight when the envelope spread across the kitchen table, white, gray, an anxious constellation under the single overhead bulb. You can hear the small things when the world quiets, the slow tick of the clock, the refrigerator's hum, the rustle of paper as hands move, hesitate, fold. We can't keep doing this, someone says, voice thin with the kind of truth that has been avoided for months. The room tastes of old coffee and unsaid decisions. The pressure tightens. Late notices, calls that go to voicemail, the landlord's curt message, each one a small hammer. Yet beneath that noise, a quieter sound surfaces, subtle as a hymn hummed under breath, a steady inner prompting pointing not to panic but to principle. Steward what you have, it says. Decide with courage. Shape each day by habit. It does not shout prosperity into being, it asks for clarity, for courage, for tiny acts repeated until momentum shifts. You bargain with fear. A memory surfaces, your grandmother counting coins on a back porch, teaching patience through the ritual of saving. A neighbor knocks and offers a part-time job, someone from church mentions a business contact, a voicemail from a former colleague suggests a freelance gig. Doors begin to open not all at once but one by one, like shutters welcoming morning. You call the cable company, you negotiate a payment plan. You draft a budget that feels honest instead of punitive. You choose to give a little, even when the math says hold back. The act of generosity loosens something inside, a stubbornness of scarcity yielding to trust. Conversations become decisive. I'll sell the extra car, you tell your partner. I'll take the evening shift for 6 months, you promise yourself. Nights for planning replace nights for worry. The messages keep coming, through scripture read at dawn, through a friend's offhand comment, through the steady nudge of conscience, and they shape not only choices but the temperament beneath them, steadier, more deliberate, less terrified. This is the crucible, pressure-forging principles. If these moments resonate and you want practical ways to carry them forward, like this message, subscribe, and ring the bell to follow the next steps. Ahead, we move from reaction to strategy, where small adjustments become a mapped path to lasting abundance. Night after night the same ritual plays out, the glow of the bank app on the kitchen counter, unpaid envelopes spread like cards on a table, the soft tick of a clock that measures more than time, it measures hope. You press your forehead to the cool window and listen. At first the messages are so soft you almost mistake them for the hum of the refrigerator. Steward what you have, be honest with your numbers, give where you can even if it's small. They come like a breeze through half-open blinds, a cadence that fits the rhythm of your breath. Each whisper is a principle, not a promise of instant rescue, but a map for the steps ahead. Under the pressure the messages sharpen. When the landlord's note slides under the door, a voice, calm and unassuming, reminds you of courage. Not the bravado of reckless bets, but the kind that signs up for hard work, set boundaries with spenders, cancel the subscriptions that cushion only boredom, ask for a payment plan, and pick up the extra shift without letting bitterness sit at the table. You rehearse small acts of discipline like prayers, 1 meal cooked at home, 1 hour devoted to learning a skill, 1 envelope labeled opportunity set aside each week. The habit becomes a ritual. You feel your shoulders uncoil by fractions. There are human guides too, a neighbor who once walked this road, an old friend whose eyes light differently when they talk about giving back. They speak not with answers, but with questions that cut through excuses. What do you protect at all costs? Where are you investing your energy? Their words land like stones in a river, changing the current. You barter possessions, mend relationships, and say no until the yes that aligns with purpose has room to breathe. Doors begin to open in quiet, improbable ways. A barista mentions an opening at a startup, a client remembers your name and offers freelance work, a church volunteer invites you to manage a small fund and you discover a knack for stewardship. Each opportunity is not a windfall but a corridor, requiring consistent footsteps, not a single leap. Doubt still visits, sometimes it bangs on the door with late notices and old fears. Yet the messages return, steadier now, like a hand shaping clay. Choose wisely, steward boldly, be generous even when it seems risky. If these moments resonate, hold them, like this video, subscribe, tap the bell, and let the next message find you. Ahead, you move from reaction to strategy. A decision will arrive that requires everything you've learned so far. You sit at the kitchen table under the tired halo of a single lamp, envelopes spread like small islands on a dark sea. Rain taps the window in a steady, impatient rhythm. The bills are louder tonight, the ledger is unkind. Yet somewhere beneath that noise, a voice arrives, not loud, but certain, like a hand on your shoulder. Begin with what you hold, it says. Steward what you already have. You imagine the voice as an old friend or the careful teacher you never knew you needed. It does not promise quick fixes. It speaks of tiny offenses against waste, a subscription quietly cancelled, a pair of lunches made instead of bought, an impulse to sell the bicycle sitting in the hallway. The counsel is practical and sacred at once. Steward your resources, make courageous choices, let discipline be the rhythm of your days. Do not scramble, it whispers. Arrange. You wrestle with pride and the ache of deferred dreams. What if I fail, you ask aloud to the empty room. The response is steady, failure is not the end but a lesson that sharpens intention. So you set a small plan, an evening to tally, a morning to wake earlier and take 1 extra hour for purposeful work, a promise to give a modest portion of what you reclaim. The act of generosity surprises you. It isn't about losing money but about aligning your heart with a flow bigger than fear. As days fold into weeks, discipline sculpts new patterns. The neighbor who once waved now offers a short contract, a client returns after seeing your consistent updates, a sympathetic bank representative suggests a revised payment plan. Doors do not swing open for no reason, your steady steps meet an opening, and a warm light spills across the threshold. The pressure does not vanish, but it becomes a forge where character and resources are reshaped together. If this resonates, give this a like, let that small gesture be an echo of the choice you're making. Subscribe and ring the bell to keep these messages coming. The path ahead will show precise, repeatable practices you can use today. The next moment will test your new steadiness, a tempting offer, a sudden expense, a decision that reveals whether you've learned to steward what you have. You wake before dawn, the city still folding itself into silence, and sit at the kitchen table with a single lamp and a stack of envelopes. The sacred whispers that once felt like distant echoes now press at the edges of your day. Pay attention, steward what you have, be brave. You cross out impulse purchases, you circle what matters, rent, food, a small cushion, and you breathe as if learning a new language. The room smells faintly of coffee and paper. Outside, a delivery truck hums a promise of movement. In that hush you hear a voice, soft, certain, begin with one decision. You say it aloud, as if to test the sound, and the sound steadies you. Across the table your partner reaches for your hand. We can do this, she says, and you feel the ordinary courage of two people becoming a single resolve. You call the cable company, you ask for a hardship plan, your voice is firm because the whisper has given it direction. You move money, not out of panic but with purpose, an automated transfer to savings, a small regular gift to the table at church or the shelter down the block, an act of giving that feels like declaring trust. Discipline becomes devotional. Each choice is a prayer translated into action. Cancel the subscription you never use, negotiate the late fee, set reminders for bills, and then show up to the day with a quieter heart. Doors begin to open in ways you didn't expect. A neighbor notices the flyer you posted and offers a side job, a late fee is waived after a simple, honest explanation, an old friend recommends you for freelance work. These are not miracles detached from effort but invitations that meet your readiness. The messages you were hesitating to hear prove practical and tender, principles of stewardship disguised as small, daily acts. You keep a notebook now, not for dreams alone but for habits, when you gave, what changed, when you chose courage, how the path shifted. Prosperity arrives like a slow tide, not sudden but steady, its rhythm teaching you how to steward blessing rather than be overwhelmed by it. If this chapter speaks to you and you want the exact rhythms that turned pressure into progress, tap like to hold this moment close, subscribe and ring the bell, there is more practical guidance coming. And just as you begin to feel steadier, the next challenge appears on your calendar, testing whether these new rhythms will hold. You stay at the kitchen table long after the light in the living room has gone out. The lamp throws a thin halo across envelopes, a ledger app open on your phone, the hum of the refrigerator like a distant metronome. The sacred messages that first nudged you return, softer now, like a hand on your shoulder, steward what you have, choose courage over comfort, let generosity be your rhythm. They're not slogans, they are instructions, precise and patient. You begin with small, concrete acts. You slide one bill into a separate envelope and label it future. You cancel a subscription that had been eating the margin of your days. You call the creditor and speak plainly, no dramatics, only honesty, and the voice on the line offers a payment plan you hadn't expected. Each decision is a tiny consecration, an extra night of cooking at home, an hour spent learning a new skill instead of scrolling, a deliberate transfer set up to build a safety net. The room seems to breathe a little easier. A neighbor knocks, asking if you can help move a heavy piece of furniture. You agree and, later, as you hand back a small envelope of cash you'd been saving for just in case, the neighbor stops and says, "You know, my boss needs someone who can do exactly what you did today." It's not a fairy tale windfall, it's the simple geometry of generosity: give with no expectation and watch the world reorient. Doubt still visits, late notices gather like storm clouds, but now when fear speaks, the counsel answers: be disciplined, yes, but also be brave enough to invest in yourself. You enroll in a short course, trading evenings of comfort for sharpened skill. You sit with the sting of sacrifice and discover it is tempered by meaning. The whispers, "Teach me to steward, take one brave step," become a steady map. Choices that once felt like losses now feel like reallocation: time as capital, attention as currency, kindness as seed. In one small, luminous moment you stand at the counter, holding a folded note you've left for a stranger in need. It's only a modest sum, but your chest opens, your hands are steady. The messages have stopped being faint. They are forming a grammar for your days. And as doors begin to creak open, an email about freelance work, a friend's unexpected referral, the question changes from "how will I survive" to "how will I steward what's coming?" If this part of the journey touches something inside you, like so you don't lose it, subscribe and ring the bell to keep walking beside these messages. Next, you will see how those small, steady shifts coalesce into a real turning point, where reaction gives way to strategy, and prosperity starts to take shape. Nights of quiet calculation become the new rhythm. You sit at the kitchen table with a single lamp, the rest of the house asleep, and the stack of envelopes between your hands like small mountains to be climbed. The voice that first whispered guidance now comes clearer, sometimes as a memory of scripture, sometimes as the steady conviction in your chest. Begin with margin, it says. Make room for what matters. You mark the smallest line items that can be trimmed, you stagger payments instead of collapsing, you negotiate one overdue notice into a promise to pay. Each decision feels small, but they stitch together into something stronger than habit, a posture of stewardship. On a damp morning when the coffee steam fogs the window, a phone call comes from a client you nearly lost. They say, almost apologetically, "We need that proposal, can you deliver?" You say yes. You work with a focus that surprises you, guided by the temporary friction that honed your choices. There is fear, yes, an old friend that sits heavy in your jaw, but there is also clarity. You remember the counsel to give, you put aside a tiny portion from the incoming check and quietly wire it to a neighbor whose car has failed. The neighbor's gratitude returns to you not only in thanks but in a referral 2 weeks later, a steady retainer that begins to change the math. Conversations shape the path. You look different, your partner remarks, watching you fold spreadsheets into manageable sections. Calmer, they add. The change is not just financial. In prayer, in quiet walks, in the sacrificial but measured generosity you offer, a new identity takes root, one that understands abundance as responsibility. Doubts still come, especially on days when a sudden bill cuts through the hard-won calm. But now you consult the counsel you learned in the crucible: steward well, choose courage, maintain discipline. The messages keep arriving, through books, through mentors, through a passing sentence in a sermon, and each one tunes your hands to the work of wise living. You see doors open, small contracts, a trusted friend who connects you to a market, a landlord who agrees to a plan, and you begin to feel the shape of something larger forming. It's not finished. There will be tests when blessing grows. If this unfolding has touched you, stay with what comes next. In the next part, practical steps and faith-filled strategies will show how to steward new prosperity without losing your soul. If this moved you, like with your heart, subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss what follows. The days after the turning point feel both ordinary and charged. You find yourself at the kitchen table at dawn, a single lamp throwing a warm circle over envelopes and a steaming mug. The messages you heard, faint at first, arrive now as small, steady instructions: pay this bill now, call that neighbor, set aside a little each week. They come as a whisper when you open your calendar, as a nudge in the margin of a receipt, as a calm conviction when fear wants to seize the steering wheel. You begin to treat those nudges like a map, not a mystery. Discipline replaces panic, a budget with purpose, a plan that honors both need and seed. You cut what's lavish and unreliable, and you channel energy into what grows. There are scenes that teach you faster than theory. A barista returns your forgotten jacket and mentions a client who needs the very skill you've been shelving. A church volunteer gives you a folder with names of part-time opportunities. You say yes when generosity asks you to pay for someone's lunch, and weeks later an unexpected referral lands at your inbox. Each small choice feels like a conversation with something wiser than your worry, an unseen counsel that prizes stewardship over scarcity. You wrestle. Late-night doubts press like rain on the roof. Have I waited too long? You ask the quiet room. The reply is neither loud nor dramatic, it is steady: start here. So you start, a spreadsheet, a savings jar labeled opportunity, a disciplined time block for learning. You practice saying no to impulse and yes to what builds. You measure progress not by sudden windfalls but by increasing calm and growing options. Prosperity begins to look less like luck and more like cultivated fruit. Doors don't fly open so much as slide ajar when you knock with consistency and humility. The transformation is practical and spiritual, skill paired with faith, prudence enlivened by generosity. If that quiet stirring has reached you, you'll want to stay close. There is a sequence of steps next that will test and deepen your stewardship, and if you found hope here, tap like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what comes next. The kitchen light is low, a thin halo over a table scattered with envelopes. He runs a thumb along the edge of a past due notice and feels the old, familiar tug of anxiety, then something softer, a voice like wind through pines: steward what you have. It's not accusatory. It's precise, like a hand on the shoulder. He breathes and begins to speak aloud, as if the room itself could answer, okay. Tell me where to begin. The next days unfold like careful rehearsals. He wakes before sunrise, the city still wrapped in cold blue, and opens a ledger. Numbers formerly avoided now take shape. He calls the cable company and negotiates a lower plan, surprising himself with steadiness. He sells a rarely used tool online, the photo posted between coffee sips. A neighbor returns a favor and passes along a lead, a part-time consulting job that fits his old skills. Each small act is a brick, the weight on his chest eases by millimeters. There are setbacks, an unexpected medical bill, a late payment that bruises the credit score, but the messages persist, arriving not as easy guarantees but as principles. Courage to choose less for now, they say. Generosity, even when wallets are thin, opens other hands. He gives a modest amount to a community pantry, not knowing why, and 2 days later a former client emails about a project with a fair fee. He almost laughs aloud at the timing, then bows his head and thanks whatever force guided that nudge. At work he becomes deliberate, refusing reactive spending, learning to ask questions: where does this serve my purpose? Will this grow what matters? His partner notices the change, less frantic scrolling, more evenings spent planning, and says, "You're calmer. It's like you finally heard something." They sit together under warm lamplight and map goals, small milestones inked in a shared notebook. Entrances previously closed begin to show hinges. A bank offers a flexible repayment plan after he presents a realistic budget. A landlord agrees to a short extension in exchange for timely partial payment. Through it all the voice remains wise, neither promising sudden riches nor condemning. It teaches stewardship, discipline, and a bravery that looks like patience. He learns to steward blessing as if it were fragile glass, handle it with intention, polish it with gratitude. Just as doors begin to open, an unexpected message arrives, an email subject line that reads simply, "Let's talk opportunity." He hesitates a heartbeat, then taps it open, ready to listen as the next instruction unfolds. You sit at the kitchen table as dawn bleeds through the curtains, a stack of envelopes like small mountains at your elbow. The house is quiet except for the soft, steady hum of the refrigerator and the slow, sure beat of your own breath. Once more you ask the question out loud, half to the empty room, half to whatever still speaks when everything else falls away. Is this really for me? A voice answers, not loud, not demanding, but precise, like sunlight through a keyhole. Begin where you are. Steward what you have. You startle, then you listen. In the weeks that follow, the voice becomes less of a surprise and more of a companion. It arrives in the groove of your morning routine, in the careful closing of a spreadsheet, in a whispered nudge to call an old client. You find yourself saying yes to small disciplines, tracking each dollar, choosing the slow meal over the fast convenience, setting aside a little generosity even when the margin is thin. One evening, your partner looks up from washing dishes and asks quietly, "Are you different?" You laugh, a short, disbelieving sound, and admit, "I think I'm learning to answer." Pressure still comes. A late notice slides under the door like a test. You feel the old panic rising, but now it's tempered by the steady counsel that taught you to plan, to protect, to pivot. You sit with the fear, give it a name, and then choose action over shame. Doors you thought closed begin to open, an unexpected freelance gig, a neighbor who shares a lead, an old skill you dust off that becomes a small, steady income. Each blessing arrives with its own responsibilities, and the voice is there again, reminding you that abundance is not only received but held well. You stand now not at the end of a fairy tale, but at the doorway of stewardship, wiser, steadier, with hands ready. Prosperity has become a promise you keep, not a windfall you chase. If this story touched something inside you, like this moment with a quiet heart, subscribe to walk this path with us and ring the bell so the next message finds you when it comes.